Hello, Manchester. Welcome to Ward 13. You may notice that neither one of us is John Hopwood. I'm Connie Van Houten. I'm sitting in tonight for John Hopwood. Some of you may know me from local politics. I've been around a bit. I have been on the school board, and I am currently running for state rep as an incumbent from District 45, which is wards 10, 11, and 12. I'd like to introduce my co-host, though actually I'll let her introduce herself. Heidi Hamer, please.
I'm Heidi Hamer, and I'm a Ward 10 resident, and I am also the ward clerk at Ward 10, and I am also running for state rep in Ward 10, District 17 as for state rep. And we have Garth with us today, and excited.
We actually have a West Side group here. We're
I know. Well, I'm a newbie to the West Side,
Yes.
but yes, been there a year.
And I'm an oldie to the West Side, but I perhaps shouldn't use that.
Well, my family, look, the Corriveaus generations ago were on the West Side, and I'm sure there still are some in addition to my clan. But.
And my maiden name is LaFawn, so I go way back into the French-Canadian roots on top of all this. Garth, I want to welcome you. Thank you for being here.
Having me. Thank you.
I know that you've been on camera most of the day today, and so we appreciate your staying with us and continuing.
I appreciate being here. Thank you.
We have a great venue, I think, for us to talk about a lot of things that are going on. As evidenced here, New Hampshire is the state in which your neighbor could be running.
Yeah.
Your neighbor could be helping to make the laws.
Yeah.
And so in that sense, it's really good for us to have that opportunity to get to know people one-on-one.
Yeah.
So I thank John Hopwood for giving us this time on Ward 13 to do this. And I thank you and Heidi both for being here. We're going to kind of go back and forth on some questions here because there's so much we want to know about you.
All right.
And I'd just like to start with the first one. Who are you?
Let's see. Well, my name is Garth Corriveau. I am a husband. I'm a father of 3 boys, ages 4, 2, and 2 months old.
You should give the boys' names in case they're still not watching,
my
right?
boys.
Shout out.
Yeah, Heath, who is 4, Bo, who is 2, and Quinn, who is 2 months, or almost 2 months old, 8 weeks old, to be precise.
Garth, I fixed the camera so you can now stare at America.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So yeah, my 3 sons.
Excellent.
I work as a small business attorney in the city at Mesmer and DeLoe, a few blocks from here. I also teach at mostly business law at Southern New Hampshire University. Probably, if anyone has heard of me, for the most likely reason is I served 6 years as a Manchester Alderman. I represented the east side of Manchester, Ward 6, for 6 years. Loved it. Our brood outgrew our little house, and so I've moved from the east side to the west side now in Ward 12. But so I served 6 years. Alongside a lot of good aldermen at that time. Joyce Craig being one. We were elected at the same time, and it was a fascinating experience in that I really got into politics with the Obama campaign. I'd always been interested in politics. My first job out of college, I worked as an organizer for Jean Shaheen, and then in law school, helped pay my own freight through student loans, and I worked as an organizer for Planned Parenthood then. Then after law school, really kind of was very disenchanted with politics, and then this young guy with a funny name ran for office, and I was inspired, and that got me in, and I became president of the Young Democrats and got a lot of young people into politics in 2008, which was a great experience. The following year, I really wanted to do something on the local level. I just didn't know what, and all of a sudden, longtime Republican Alderman Real Pennard retired, and I said to myself, wow, this is a time in my life, some young single guy with just a job, I can do this, and worked very hard, met a lot of people, knocked a lot of doors, and what do you know? All of a sudden, I was the alderman for Ward 6, and I was reelected twice before I had to move. But it was a great experience. I think the big thing I really learned was that government really works when people just come together to work collaboratively, just work on issues. And for so much of my experience on the Board of Aldermen, that was really hard to do. Not necessarily with other aldermen, but after a little while, it became difficult for people like me or now Mayor Craig to try to find common ground with Ted Gassis at the time. We just had really different priorities. I think for a lot of us, to serve in local government means, to do everything you can to strengthen public safety, to invest in education, to make the community just a better, more empathetic, inclusive, welcoming community. And for so many reasons, we just were seeing the opposite of that happen. We had to just fight, fight hard to just keep things from getting worse. And that was, that was tough. That was a learning experience that, I now look at, Mayor Craig and what's going on, and I say to myself, wow, the opportunity now to actually do things in Manchester is great. But what ended up happening was Chris Pappas, who's our current executive counselor, is running for Congress. And kind of early this year, I started getting some phone calls from people saying, you've been out of City Hall a couple of years, and I think it's time you start thinking about something, the executive council. And talked about it with Kate, talked about it with my colleagues at Mesmer and DeLoe, and then what really, I think, cemented the notion that I felt compelled, that I almost felt like I didn't have a choice except to try, was at the time I was really making up my mind. SB 193 was the big political issue at the State House, which
Absolutely.
I know you championed
Absolutely.
the fight against that. But for those of you who don't know, SB 193 was Frank Edelbluth's voucherization scheme, whereby money would be taken out of public schools and provided as tax subsidies for people who wish to send their kids to parochial or private schools or homeschools, but not public schools. Now, to me, as an alderman, one of my favorite things to do was to go into city schools. It's great.
Do you know how much I can relate to what you're saying? 'Cause my school board experience was parallel to your aldermanic experience. And the roadblocks that I saw and the things that we saw with SB 193, which is dastardly, were well worth considering. You said a great many things that I think are fantastic, but let me let you finish up on SB 193.
Sure, yeah. So in any case, SB 193 was championed by the new Commissioner of Education, Frank Edelbluth. Now, Frank Edelbluth, for those of you who may not know him, he is not what I guess would even remotely be called an expert on public education. He's never worked in public education at any level, teaching, administering, anything. Has no degrees in education whatsoever. And in fact, homeschooled his 7 children. This is someone who's pretty much the antithesis. His biography is pretty much the antithesis of public education. As someone who's loved going into Manchester schools and seeing these kids, facing these daily, challenges I, can't imagine growing up with, but that was their opportunity, that school day to move forward. To me, to take away from those kids, to take away from those most in need, so that people with means could have more, that they could have a tax break. To me, that is against everything I stand for. And Frank Edelbluth, by the way, the last thing to say is he was approved on a 3-2 vote. 3 Republicans, 2 Democrats. Now, traditionally on the executive council, someone who had no experience whatsoever in something, particularly a major state agency like the Department of Education, would never have even been considered. But he was rammed through by Governor Sununu and 3 Republicans. And we saw the consequences of coming very, very close to taking a battle axe to public education in this state.
We actually voted 4 times against it. We had to go that often against it to get it to lie down and stay down.
Right. But had there been no right-wing ideologue as Commissioner of Education, I sometimes I go around to events and I say, he's Betsy DeVos without the high heels, But Frank Edelbluth is not a defender, a proponent, an advocate for public education. He's looking to dismantle public education. Education is your opportunity. I would not be I would not be who I am without the fact that I was blessed to have great teachers, And everyone deserves that opportunity for a great public education. And when I thought about, hey, look, these 3 people made that decision to make him Commissioner of Education. 3 people made that decision. And I said to myself, you know what? I need to try. I need to just try to campaign and try to get elected to the Executive Council, because I think Chris Pappas was, of course, on the right side of this issue, but
And Andy Belinsky was also
and
supportive,
Andy
right?
Belinsky, exactly. So
Right.
so if we can, if knock on wood, if I can get elected and a good Democrat, whether it's Deb Pignatelli or Joe Pace or Mike Rines, any one of them can get elected too. I really think we can do much, much more to provide real oversight and accountability in state government so that we don't see things like this happen again. Because I'll tell you, if no one would have thought a couple years ago someone like Frank Edelblut would be possible. No one thought, a Tea Party ideologue would be in charge of public education, someone with no experience whatsoever. Don't think that won't happen with Health and Human Services.
Yes.
Don't think that they won't try to put a privatizer in to come after your earned entitlements, to come after your Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. Don't think it's happened. It just happened with Frank Edelblut in education. Don't think Governor Sununu and 3 executive counselors won't try to do it to your health care. They will. That is by far the biggest government agency in our state, and they will come after it. So having those 3 advocates for public education, for affordable, accessible health care, I think for Planned Parenthood, is monumentally important. And I know the Executive Council doesn't get the attention that Governor or Congress does, but when you're talking about 5 people who make huge decisions, and so 3 people are going to make those, or 3 out of those 5 can essentially make these monumental decisions on everything from education to healthcare to transportation. It's really incredibly important that people actually understand who their executive counselor is, what he or she stands for, and what they're going to do.
I totally share that fire that brought you to this candidacy. As a matter of fact, as a freshman state rep in this last term, one of the first things I did was to march over to watch the Executive Council interviewing. And there were some great questions. Andy Belinsky was fantastic. Chris Pappas was fantastic. I actually became so irate that without any prepared anything and still very new to the process, someone said, is there a state rep prepared to speak? The word prepared never crossed my mind. And so I just brought my anger and my concern that education was going to be put into the hands. I'm sure he's a fine man. I don't mean to diminish him personally.
Yeah, absolutely.
But as far as having background in education, I sat down and clearly told him that I have better experience than he does to bring to the table,
That's right.
having taught in
Very
Manchester
much
for many,
so,
many
yes.
years. And again, I share the passion that you bring for understanding the locality of Manchester and knowing who we are, because we are such a small state that knowing who your constituents are as closely as we can in New Hampshire is absolutely fantastic. So I appreciate that. Heidi, you had a question.
Not sure which one it was.
Anything.
Planned Parenthood.
Yeah.
So you're for that, right?
Yeah, I'm a big supporter of Planned Parenthood. As I briefly alluded to, when I was in law school, one of my professors worked for Planned Parenthood, and she knew I had just worked coming into law school as an organizer for Jean Shaheen, and she said, hey, look, there's about to be this cool new initiative that is going to happen here in Planned Parenthood of New Hampshire, and it involves organizing, and I'd like you to be a part of it. And so I decided to do. I did it, and it was a great experience. I mean, on sort of a theoretical or political level, I supported Planned Parenthood. I went to work for them, but when you are there, when you're a part of it, when you're going into the clinics, when you're hearing the stories of its patients and of its supporters, people's deeply personal stories, it impacted me in a way that to this day I remember that experience very, very clearly. So to me, Planned Parenthood stands for. It hurts a little bit to see it politicized to the extent that it is, because there are partisan politicians who are just going to scream abortion, and that's all that they're going to do. But in reality, what people don't realize is federal law prohibits taxpayer money from funding abortion. Federal law. It's been like that a long, long time. The funding that goes through the Executive Council that goes to Planned Parenthood does not fund abortion. It funds everything from cancer screenings to well woman exams, STDs, birth control, things that 80% of people can agree on. That's just smart public health policy. That these are the services Planned Parenthood also provides. And not only that, but Planned Parenthood, it serves communities that otherwise might not be served. Particularly here in Manchester, people who live at the poverty level, people who are immigrants and refugees, people who, by the way, are, their citizenship status might make them too scared to go to the hospital, that they're afraid that they might be taken away from their families, but they know they're safe at Planned Parenthood. All of these people, tens of thousands of people, rely on Planned Parenthood for critical healthcare services. So to me, to see Planned Parenthood used on a partisan basis as just people screaming abortion is just a sad commentary on political discourse. To me, I know what Planned Parenthood is. I've worked for them. And what I want to see is advocates of smart public health, of affordable, accessible health care. That's what Planned Parenthood is, and that's what we need to do much, much more of in this state. I mean, I personally believe health care should be a right, not a privilege. That's what I hope to see in my lifetime. If I can be a part of that on the Executive Council, I want to be a part of that.
So now that we've gotten into one of the topics that's come out of the recent Executive Council, let me back you up a little bit. I'd like you to, first of all, to tell us where you're running,
Yep.
What localities will be able to
Sure.
vote for you or
Yep.
not vote for you, whichever the case may be, and what on earth is the Executive Council?
Sure.
Not every
Yeah.
state has that kind of
Oh, no,
configuration
no,
in government, and I'm sure there are people who are not quite sure as to what the
Sure.
Executive Council does.
Sure.
So a couple of questions there.
Process-oriented, the Executive Council is essentially a five-member board of directors for the state of New Hampshire. It's part of the executive branch. The governor reports to the Executive Council. The governor is almost like a CEO or a chairman, and the council is like a five-member board of directors. And what they do is they vote on all state contracts that are of the value of $10,000 or more. So that's virtually every
Right.
state contract. And nominations, the governor's nominations to state cabinet positions, state agencies, and the judiciary. So in most states, a lot of that gets done either, for example, contracts just by the governor, or judicial nominations, cabinet appointments by the legislature. In New Hampshire, we have this quasi five-member body. It kind of acts legislative at times, even though it's executive. It does executive things too, that makes these really important decisions. So that's what the Executive Council is. So those five people make incredibly important decisions. It's in many ways. Each one of their votes is of tremendous impact if you live in the state of New Hampshire. In terms of this district, District 4, it's been served the past 3 terms by Chris Pappas. Very well, I might say.
Agreed.
Chris, I talked with him about getting into this, and he gave me some great advice, because I said, look, at first, before I get into anything else, can I do this job? I was like, because if I can't, then I'm not going to, put in all this time away from my family. But he said, Garth, yeah, you can do it, because you're going to be basically voting on what you did as an alderman. You're still voting on nominations to, cabinet positions. You're still voting on state contracts. It's just from the city level to the state level. So it's going to be more of it. And the nice thing is I don't have to worry about the state budget. I'll leave that to you guys.
We do that.
Exactly. We'll do that.
That's our
right.
little bailiwick, if you wish.
And the district is the city of Manchester.
Okay.
Any community contiguous to Manchester, so Bedford, Londonderry, Goffstown, Hooksett, Auburn, Candia, Deerfield, then it sort of runs up north into sort of the southern and eastern Concord suburbs. Towns like Loudon, Epsom, Chichester, Allenstown, and all the way out into Barrington and Lee. But a total of 19 communities, so city of Manchester and 18 towns.
Are you opposed in the primary?
I am. Yes, there's primaries on both sides actually. A primary for me and a Republican primary. A new candidate, first-time candidate, Gray Chinawith, who's a corporate executive in the mill yard, running for the first time, and on the Republican side, former state rep Jane Cormier, and a very familiar face in Manchester, Ted Gassis. So it'll be one of the four of us.
So you're telling us that your local experience is a major thing. I think you've neglected to say that your business background is incredibly important. Do you
Well,
want to
thank you.
elaborate
Yeah,
there?
yeah. It's interesting because I think one of the things that distinguishes me in this race is that our campaign it's a grassroots campaign. It really is. That's how I met my wife on the Obama campaign. Grassroots organizing. I've worked as an organizer twice in my life. Jean Shaheen, Planned Parenthood, and did a lot of work on the Obama campaign. I met my wife there, and what really, I guess, sort of happened was sorry, I'm losing my train of thought a little bit here. But
Well, you segued into your wife, and that
yeah,
is-
yeah, well, exactly. Who's everything? Exactly. But the race, to me, having a grassroots campaign is important to me. And I think it's important to other people too. But I'm proud of the fact we're not taking in corporate money. Only one of the four who's not. We're the only candidate, only campaign. And the reason I'm doing that is because I want to be held accountable by people. Having that 6 years of representing the east side of Manchester, hardworking middle class families. That's who I want to be accountable to. Bottom line, that's who I want. Those are going to be the people who I want to be a champion for, be an advocate. And it's not that I'm anti-business, as you said. I'm a small business attorney.
Sure.
I teach business law. It gives me great pleasure to start businesses and help them thrive and grow. But I don't believe businesses or corporations are people. I just don't believe that. The law, Citizens United may say that. I don't believe on a practical level that's the case. So I'm running a people first campaign, grassroots campaign, and I think it's going really well. There's no way to know, of course, until the votes are cast.
September 11th will be your
September
first
11th.
opportunity to do
that
that.
will be.
Yes.
Yes. But I'm excited. We're obviously 5 weeks out, 5 weeks today, I think.
Just about, probably, yeah.
And so I'm excited. It's been a lot of hard work. A lot of time away from the family.
And with a new baby in the household on top of
Yeah,
everything, yeah.
I married Wonder Woman. What do you want me to say? She's keeping everything going at the home front. I was at the Bookmobile yesterday at
Yeah.
Livingston Park,
We
this
saw that.
Manchester Bookmobile, and I loved it because it's the opportunity to read to children, and that is the highlight of my day every day. It's not campaigning, it's
Right.
not work. It's I either have a campaign event or I'm dialing for contributions, and I race home so that I can read a story to Heath and Bo. That's the highlight of my day. And then after that, the rest of the day is just, okay, I need to get some sleep.
And I think that's why bringing up like SB 193
Yeah.
really cuts to the heart of who we are, because it
Yeah.
is about kids, it is about our future, it is about our public schools.
Yeah.
And I think we're both champions of the good things,
Yeah.
the really great things that are happening in our public education
Oh,
here.
yeah.
Not that we don't have challenges, I don't think anybody will
Right.
deny that.
Yeah.
But we do have an opportunity here to keep our community thriving through great public
Absolutely.
education.
Oh yeah, I couldn't agree more. I really think that, I look at this picture of the mill yard behind
Yeah.
you, and what's happening in the mill yard's amazing. There's no
yes,
denying
yes.
it. I mean, it's incredible. The higher education and high tech. But what I do hope people in Manchester realize is that scene is not just Manchester. That you can travel
Right.
half a mile down the road, down Lake Avenue, and you're going to be in a very different Manchester. People who are struggling, who need real opportunity, who need health care, who need just a shot, any sort of opportunity. And I think that, that everyone deserves to have a government that works for them, not just the business people in the mill yard. They of course they deserve a seat at the table, but having sat at a table, in the city hall chambers making important decisions, it's about making those decisions for the people, who need that opportunity. Middle class people. We're seeing the middle class starting to dissipate so much. We need to strengthen the middle class. We need to, have empathy for people who are struggling in all of our communities right now. And it kills me to see, some of the leadership in our country right now and just the utter lack of empathy and decency and, that's happening, because I think we're just quickly learning that, so much of government is just electing just good people of just character. That goes a long, long way. It really does.